Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today and this week, we are going to start focusing on our origins of World War II. We have basically all but wrapped up the Great Depression, and World War II kind of coincides with that wrap up. So here's where we'll start. You can put these notes into a Google Doc as you're watching. You can take them on a notebook, whichever. If you just want to use them for reference, that's perfectly fine, but it's going to help you out with those readings on appeasement. So let's get started. First and foremost, the rise of anti-democratic governments happened because of things like the Treaty of Versailles after World War I, the economic depression that was going throughout the world after the United States collapsed into the Great Depression, and these were spreading through Europe and Asia. The Treaty of Versailles really did upset a lot of Germanic people of how things were settled after World War I. Mussolini, the gentleman to our right here, his first name Benito, he appointed himself as a leader of Italy in 1922 under a fascist government. Fascism is the political system that is led by a dictator with extreme nationalism and no tolerance for opposition. So you are the leader, no one else is allowed to oppose you, no one's allowed to go against you, you're in charge, and that's about it. He rose to the top through his militia referred to as the Black Shirts. These were basically thugs who would go through, threaten any sort of political opponents, and promise to restore Italy to the glories of the great Roman Empire that used to exist way back in the day with, Julius Caesar or Octavius or Augustus, whichever one. But people were really pumped about this because of all the things that still existed from ancient Rome. Okay, then we have the Soviet Union. If you remember from our unit on World War I, what do we got here? Get out of here. Okay, thank you. This is awesome. Love it. That totally, don't worry about that. World War I, we saw that the state of Russia had left World War I so that they could have their own revolution. They went communist. Communists are the people who are the United Soviet Socialists of Republics, which if I say the Soviet Union, if I say Russia, if I say the USSR, basically we're talking about the same thing. Stalin becomes the leader of this place. He was under the right wing of Vladimir Lenin, who took over, and there was this other guy, Trotsky. Stalin took out Trotsky. If you've ever read the book Animal Farm, this is what we're talking about. Stalin becomes leader and starts giving out these five-year plans, peace, land, and bread. So the first thing he does is he takes away the land and he gives giant farm collectives to all these people for government supervision. Stalin had no tolerance for opposition. He wasn't a big fan of political enemies. Why would you be? Artists, because they were free and creative and weren't necessarily workers, and intellectuals who could challenge him. They were sent to concentration camps and used as slave laborers. Hitler, who's probably one of the more famous people of World War II that you may have heard of, became the leader of the Nazi Party, and this came about from post-war Germany. He was the one who blamed the Slavic people of Europe, the Jews, for Germany's failures, and tried to create his own master race. He was also countered by Hideki Tojo, who is the Minister of War in Japan. He wasn't necessarily the direct leader, but he was part of the militarism, and he was the one who was saying, well, you guys were messing up this, and you messed this up. So he invades China in 1937, shows just how powerful he is in Nanking, killing over 300,000 people. And people respect him as a leader. Notice all of the military badges on his jacket there. Very militaristic country. Excuse me. So Hitler, the first thing he does when he appoints himself into power is he expands Germany's military. They were not supposed to have an active military larger than 100,000 people. And he defies that. He also creates Germany's first Air Force. He then calls for the unification of German-speaking people in Austria and Czechoslovakia. So he has this idea, which is in German called an Anschluss. which is to unify the regions of Czechoslovakia and Austria. So he says, you know what? I'm going to invade Austria if you don't unify. And everyone's kind of like, wow, what do we do here? I don't know. So they meet in Munich and they give him Austria. They appease him. This is what we're going to be talking about and what your assignment's on. And then demands the Sudetenland, which is the area of Czechoslovakia where a lot of German people live. So it'd be this kind of chunk right over here, so that he would have Czechoslovakia really taken over. Here's kind of a better map. All of the Sudetenland would be that vertical striped area. So people meet in Munich and from Britain, France, Italy, and Germany to decide Czechoslovakia's fate. Unfortunately, Czechoslovakia did not get to decide their own fate. Britain and France said, look, we're going to try to prevent war. We just had this massive war a couple years ago. We're not necessarily ready to do this. And unfortunately, the Munich crisis ends in Czechoslovakia getting taken over and eventually failure. Hitler then demands the Polish city of Danzig. He wants this area to connect the corridor in Poland that would connect him to the Baltic Sea as well. And everybody says, well, Hitler, if you invade Poland, we are going to go against you. Britain and France would come to its aid. Hitler then counters that and says, all right, well, I am not going to fight the Soviet Union. This is the largest country on earth. I don't want to have to fight a war on two fronts. One front would be to the left towards France. The other would be through Poland to get towards the Soviets. And Joseph Stalin agrees with Hitler to not intervene. Unfortunately, though, on September 1st, 1939, Germans claimed that they were attacked. This was a false claim. They launched a full-on scale of Poland. 2 days later, Great Britain and France declare war on Germany, and World War II officially begins. All right, that is it for today. You can check Google Classroom and Schoology for an assignment on appeasement and see if it was the right policy. Other than that, enjoy your week.